You ever notice how the symbol on Spidey's chest and back is one of the elements most susceptible to just being entirely reinterpreted? When you compare him to the other big two, it's almost comical how frequently you'll see an adaptation doing its own spin on the design. Superman's S will seemingly vary in color and sharpness, but it usually stays itself. And no matter the girth or curviness, Batman's logo has two ears up top, with ascending curves around them leading up to the thumbs, and the wings having a varying amount of bones bound by descending curves running towards a sharp center point at the bottom, most commonly 5. But what can you really say about Spidey's logo besides that it has a head, an abdomen, and 8 legs? Although I guess sometimes they don't even remember to get that part right. Despite starting out as a thick amorphous blob with a little head up top, and then very quickly, as early as ASM issue 2 or 3 really, cementing a more definitive design for itself as a more slender body in the middle, with the legs moved upward to sprout more so from the spot in between the head and the abdomen. I'd argue that definitive look continued to not leave much of an impact though, as it's rarely ever used anywhere. Honestly, it kind of varies between artists and even individual panels if the legs actually run towards a center point, are more evenly lined up along the body, or all sprout out from specifically only the head, but either way, compared to his debut appearance, there was definitely a trend of them noticeably shifting up. The design would receive a massive change several years later. I can't skim through every single issue of Amazing Spider-Man to be certain, but the shift seemed to begin with a few random panels of ASM 186 turning the upmost pair of legs to point upwards instead. Actually, I just found examples of this way earlier in the Nightcrawler team-up story from ASM 161, where on the same page even, the top legs would switch between going up and down as if they were flapping like a pair of wings. This stuff is so random, forgive me for having trouble pinpointing the exact origin. And then after the cover art of 189 had all 4 top legs pointing up in that even split, random panels in the following issues would follow a long course, with ASM 194, the first appearance of Black Cat, also being the first issue I can find to have this 4 legs up, 4 legs down spider design consistently persist throughout every panel and establish itself as the new definitive look. While still incredibly simple, and I couldn't tell you whether this old 8-legged bowling pin in itself is iconic enough to be recognized by the common public as the instantly identifiable Spider-Man logo, this is essentially the base that everything here on out would be working off of. With variations in length, thickness, and curvature aside, it practically remaining the same to this very day. And every movie logo, as far removed from the actual design as they may be, following this even split rule. The sole exception is the physical Civil War suit, but we all know what happened to that. Praise our full CGI overlords. Even so, I imagine 8 times out of 10 that you'd meet someone wearing a shirt with the Spider-Man logo on it out on the street. It wouldn't be any of those listed till now, because with ASM 252, Spidey would acquire his black suit. This design, despite still never having made it onto the big screen, Spider-Man 3 Venom sorta has it, but it's impossible to see, I'd say is without a doubt the most recognizable to the average person. Interestingly enough, it is more rooted in Steve Ditko's original design again, with all legs guiding downward, and bringing back the fang idea Ditko experimented with in some of the more detailed panels early on. I also find it funny how drawing the top will have a very strong resemblance to the Batman logo, with the fangs reminding of the ears, and the Symbiote Spider often being depicted with a very blade-like edge on the upmost pair of legs, similar to the thumb of the Batwing. In any case, this new design, boldly plastered across Spidey's entire chest and covering a large part of his torso, I'd say is the most distinct and instantly identifiable one he's had. I'm not surprised someone eventually decided to graft it onto their take on the classic suit, like Insomniac went on to do. The only change they made being the bottom 4 legs instead becoming TASM inspired, and running down a large chunk on the outside of his upper body, making the design even more all-encompassing. Which is probably another reason that the usual Spidey chest symbol isn't very iconic. Compared to many other heroes' logos and emblems, it is pretty small and spindly, easily getting lost even amongst the costume's very own web pattern, depending on the artist. Hence things like TASM spreading it out further across the suit, and alternate costumes like the Iron Spider, Sensational, and Big Time, creating new design stats, likely inspired by the black suit, wrap the spider around the whole body. I can certainly attest that whenever I draw Spidey, I also try and make the logo cover as much of his chest as possible. On the opposite end, I wanted to note a small observation I made looking through old comics for this video. The big round tick on Spidey's back seems to in fact be a very direct remnant of the previously mentioned Amazing Fantasy 15 blob. Back when it was still the big circle with the small head and the legs sprouting out of the abdomen, the design was the same on both front and back. Yet, as the front logo was altered, the back basically stayed the same, with the only change being the removal of the small head. Over time, that then began taking shape into the round tick symbol we now know. Always interesting seeing the history of something like this, only that the tick symbol also rarely is adapted, the MCU having it for a little bit, before quickly disposing of it to get us right back to the back logo being identical to the one on the front again. But if nothing ever stays the same, and every adaptation does its own thing, then what's the point of this video? Isn't the title Spider-Man's real logo? And well, I guess the answer should be sort of obvious, considering even Peter himself seems to be aware of it. The real most defining element of Spidey's character design doesn't sit on his chest or back, but resides in his mask, with the unmistakable web pattern sealing the deal of course, but specifically his eyes being the most instantly recognizable aspect of him altogether. I may not like all the other damn spider people they keep introducing, but I very much don't think that it's a coincidence Ben, Miles, Gwen, and others have designs featuring no web pattern whatsoever, and yet the giant distinct eye shape is enough to instantly let you know what they are. Several suits, such as the House of M1 for example, don't even have a spider anywhere on their costume, which only goes to show even more that it tends to be a bit of a secondary concern, though it probably looked better with it. This video was a lot of talking for such a quick conclusion, but I honestly wouldn't really know what else to say on this or how to defend this statement, as it just seems so obviously true, and is well supported by just how much the minute intricacies of their shape, size, and thickness get honed in on and scrutinized by fans, whereas most seem to just shrug and accept whatever new chest logo is served up. The PlayStation Man announcement was definitely an exception. Additionally, while a lot of people like to regularly misinterpret this interview, it's definitely noteworthy that Stan Lee himself acknowledged the importance of Spider-Man's full mask to the character's universal appeal, which doesn't refer to the eyes in particular, but you gotta imagine they played a pretty big role. The only counterpoint I could see being made is that Spidey's eyes, same as his logos, went through a lot of changes throughout the years, and continue to be drawn differently artist by artist, varying between absolutely massive, like from McFarlane, Eric Larson, and Mark Bagley, to angry little slits like the way Gabriel Del Otto does them. But even so, as hard to substantialize and vibes-based as this conclusion may be, something about Spidey's eyes just hits different. To me, it's one of the greatest design elements ever conceived for a character, and it's almost certainly his defining visual trait. I'd be very curious to hear how many people agree, but if you want to call me stupid and say it's something else, I'll still be happy to hear you out. Seriously wish YouTube still showed the damn dislike button, because in that case I could ask people to leave a like for the eyes and a dislike if they think it's the spider instead. As is, I might just have to do a YouTube poll in the following days. At least if this video ends up getting enough viewership for it to even be worth it. If not, maybe I can toss a rock through a more popular Spidey YouTuber's window, like SpiderDunk or Amazing PSM, and try threatening them into doing it, since it'll probably get a much bigger sample size. Also, since when am I really gonna find an excuse to discuss specific details of Spider-Man's design again? I don't think enough people realize that there's basically this unspoken rule to the web pattern of his mask, where there is a center line running through the top, but a split at the bottom. This little bit of asymmetry looks awesome, and holds true for essentially 99% of Spidey art out there, especially with more sparse web patterns. Which always makes it strange when you see outliers like Spectacular and Edge of Time, where the center line runs across the entire length of the mask, or Raimi, where there is no center line at all. Alex Ross's art during the Spider-Man 2 opening crawl even draws it the correct way. Edge of Time is one of my favorite takes ever on the suit, so it's kind of a bummer it doesn't adhere to the rule, as it really does unreasonably deter me from fully loving it. But yeah, just wanted to put that out there, as to me it feels like another thing everyone subconsciously knows, and yet no one ever acknowledges out loud. Same as the eye thing. Across the Spider-Verse can go fuck itself, by the way, and I gotta rant about that movie someday, but I love the redesign for 2099's suit actually turning the skull symbol into a proper spider. And I don't know why, but I think Miles' spiders in those movies being encircled looks mega rad. Very fun design idea. Also, yes, half the reason I made this video is because I really wanted to draw the thumbnail, and it was totally worth it. 50 hours well spent. For a little while I contemplated animating Spidey swinging against the glass, but then I realized I value my life too much and shouldn't do things to coerce me into prematurely hitting credits. But best to just finish my rambling now and end it here. I originally got the idea for this video almost a year ago, and now I took so long to actually make it that in the meantime Godzilla Mendoza already did a way better one in the Venom logo that's already 6 months old at this point. Seeing that notification pop up on my phone was incredibly startling, let me tell you. Which tells me that I really gotta try log in this year and get faster about pursuing the topics I have on my mind. Still primarily DMC, but also other action games, Spider-Man stuff, and maybe I can finally bring myself to talk about Attack on Titan. We'll see. For now, like and subscribe, something Patreon, and happy 2026 everyone. Also, is it better if Spidey's eyes can emote or they don't? I personally prefer when they always just maintain their shape, but both is cool. Okay, bye!